listening to TMI for the week of February 12th, 2018.
Toronto comedian Matt Donovan.
There you go.
Are you from Toronto?
Nope. I'm from Kingston, Ontario. Kingston's not that weird. It's just Kingston.
It's got a penitentiary there.
Yeah, a lot of penitentiaries. They like to say that they're really famous for their penitentiaries, even though there's fewer and fewer. So I guess there's less and less bad people.
There's that weird fort.
I guess we'll say that's a good thing. Fort Henry.
Everything's... You take exception to my prefix of weirdness, too.
No, other people have forts. Other places have forts. I didn't realize that. Like, when I moved to Toronto, I was like, oh, there's this place called Fort York. I guess they have a fort, too. I'm not so special anymore.
It's underneath Gardner Expressway, so it's not a place that's really... I don't even really know where Fort York is.
Yeah, it's just south by the lakefront. It's a fort. They have people marching around there in the summer.
And they dress up all in fort outfits.
Yeah, in fort outfits. And the ladies dress in fort outfits, I think, too, because it's equality. But there's also just, like, people who reenact the lifestyle, which is kind of funny to me.
They had a Black Creek Pioneer Village.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Yeah.
There's a subway stop for it now.
Oh my! Okay.
Did you not know that?
No, I didn't.
The new expansion on the subway has Black Creek Pioneer Village as a subway stop. Okay. Because apparently a lot of people go there still. I guess awkward. People from 1865.
So here you are in Toronto. When did you come to Toronto?
About 5-6 years ago.
And was it to pursue comedy?
No, pursue acting. I finished training at the National Theatre School in Montreal, so I lived there for 3 years, more or less, to do acting training, and then I jetted off to Toronto to pursue all that stuff and get an agent and make my fame.
Wow.
Which is kind of...
There's not many people who end up staying.
I don't know. I think you definitely learn in Toronto how far you can go very fast. You're like, oh, the ceiling, it's right there. Oh, it was a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be.
The more comedians that I listen to being interviewed, the more I hear that they either came from around here or they passed through here in the early part of their career.
Toronto?
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, it's the place to be if you're Canadian.
No, I mean, even a few Americans would come up here and live here for a few years.
Why?
I know. But I guess are there a lot of small comedy rooms in Toronto? Like, not big ones, but a lot of small ones.
Yeah, so many. I mean, if you leave Toronto, even for a moment, you realize how many stand-up open mics and improv groups and all kinds of stuff that Toronto has. If you're looking for something to do, like, geez, just go. Like, there's so much. There's a huge scene for all of that stuff.
I would have thought I'd be doing a philanthropic service if I pushed the comedy scene in Toronto, but it's actually needs no pushing. There's 1-2 blocks away from here, a little comedy.
Yeah. Yes, the Absolute Comedy Bar. Absolute Comedy Club. Yeah,
they are everywhere.
They're stand-up comedy club, and they're quite lovely.
Have you done anything there?
No. I mean, I know people who work there. Another person I know from Kingston, actually, I think is a manager there. Huh. Ryan McGlenab. He's lovely. His stand-up's very great. Check that out. Okay. But yeah, Absolute Comedy is good, independent stand-up comedy place that, pays or not pays or whatever. There's not a lot of money in comedy. But yeah, it's stand-up comedy, and they serve food and they serve drinks, and it's a fun place to go.
You're trying to do acting, but if you were just trying to get into comedy in a place like Toronto, you're lucky if you get a few bucks when you work. Mm-hmm. But of course, every time you do get on stage, you either get better or you grow your audience more. But it doesn't sound survivable, and yet some people actually, most of the big comedians have endured 15 years at least of real suffering. just bouncing from small place to small place. Is that survivable? Can only crazy people make it through that?
Yeah, essentially, yes. We should all be committed. Unfortunately, they closed all those places a couple of years ago.
Now it's out treatment.
This is out treatment. Out treatment facilities are now called stand-up comedy bars. In case you're wondering, I don't think it's not survivable. It's just the acting or whatever you're going to do is kind of a passion profession. So you do a lot of free stuff. And that's just kind of how it is, especially the Canadian scene, because I think in Canada, we don't really have big names or like a star system. So even like some of the most talented people that I know in Canada, nobody knows who they are. So I mean, I'll go to like an audition for a commercial or something like that. And I'll be in the room auditioning against some of the best comedians in Canada that I know, and I'm like, I'm not the best comedian in Canada, but these people are. So I mean, the ceiling's not super high. Like you just kind of join the club faster than you think you're going to. So
what kind of camaraderie is there amongst?
Oh, it's vicious. We eat each other alive. No, not at all. I think it's very friendly and passive-aggressive and just kind of like, oh, I hate you. Except I love you. Great. Good job.
I've heard on the American scene there's a nice comedian's table and a mean comedian's table.
Well, I think Americans are meaner than we are, and they're more forthright. In Canada, before you say anything to a person, you have to say, I'm sorry first. So it's like, I'm really, really sorry, but you really need to try and be a nicer person to most people, I think. But, sorry about that. Also, sorry for speaking. I'm just going to excuse myself now. And that's a typical Canadian statement, in my opinion. Like, you say sorry at least 3 times around everything you say. Whereas Americans will just be like, your hat sucks. Period. And that's pretty much the end of it. And they'll look you in the eye while they do it. We also don't make eye contact.
Are Canadian audiences nicer than American audiences?
No. But like, we're nicer, but not nicer. I think we're more judgy. I think the fun thing about where I'm from, Kingston, is that Kingston is actually known as a very judgmental place. I've heard a lot of performers and stuff will roll through Kingston or whatever, and they're afraid of Kingston audiences because Kingston audiences tend to like sit with their arms crossed and they kind of look at you and they're like, what you got? That wasn't that funny. I'm just gonna go watch Corner Gas instead. They're just kind of not invested or something. They're kind of jaded. I don't really know why, but I think Canadians in general are nice, but like not nice, because I don't know.
There's a few CBC radio programs that focus attention on Canadian comedy.
I'm really dishing on my people. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sure you're offending your future audience, do you think?
I'm offending everyone. I am done. Sorry, what were you saying?
Canadian comedy featured on CBC radio.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, that's the only taste of Canadian comedy we have. I mean, there's on TV, there's the Just for Laughs and stuff. I don't know how much of those get watched. They're usually on cable channels late at night at 3 a.m. In the 80s, it was like, that's when, Live at the Improv, Bob Friedman, pay TV, there was a time during that weird little peak in comedy before that it had a weird collapse. We were saturated with stand-up on TV. It was a
Canadian stand-up?
No, but we were. It was really peaking then.
Because in the 80s, Canadian TV still really sucked.
Yeah, and
it doesn't suck anymore. I mean, but I think the problem is that with CBC and all the production companies in Canada, SCTV, etc. One of the things that they try and do is they try and create material that is marketable internationally. They don't focus on Canadian content. It's mandated to focus on Canadian content. So that's why you have shows like Murdoch Mysteries and, I don't know, Little House on the Prairie or whatever. Or the new Anne of Green Gables every 5 seconds. I
want to say this. I know you work at Second City, and so I'm not just saying this, but I'm going to be a bit of an ass. So, Schitt's Creek. Yeah. Maybe it got off to a slow start in season 1. Maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. But where they are now,
there just weren't enough people on the show.
Where they are now,
so good.
It took an entire lifetime.
Yeah.
For the CBC to put something on worth watching. I waited an entire lifetime. And wow.
Yeah.
I really like the Schitt's Creek. It even looks Canadian. It just
Yeah, I love that show. I think it's really great. And it's got 2 certifiable Canadian legends on it. Canadian legend is kind of an oxymoron still. And I think when I was going to theater school, this is definitely an idea that pops up a lot because you do Canadian content plays sometimes. And you're like, oh, so who do we do? Well, we barely have a history, so we go and do Judith Thompson and Georgia Walker and Michel Tremblay or something. But I mean, they're not that removed from who we are today. They're only like 30, 40 years in the past at most. So there's not that far to go. And when you look at Second City, like the SCTV and Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy and all those greats who more or less originate from Toronto's Second City scene and onwards, they have now achieved a kind of legendary status, but only just, Canadian legend is a very new thing for us.
Well, even that is Schitt's Creek. I mean, it's really
and it's kind of a legacy project because Dan Levy it's kind of his baby, who's Eugene Levy's son,
right?
Who's also very good.
He's very good
in the show.
Yeah. Is that an American production in the end, or is it Canadian?
I think it's Canadian. I'm not sure.
I just assumed that they went to America to promote and produce the show because that's how everything in Canada is done, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I don't really know how well Schitt's Creek is doing overseas and all that stuff. I'm not really sure. We'd have to look that statistic up. But
imagine if it wasn't doing good and yet it's as good as it is.
But you know what? Like Murdoch Mysteries sure is. It's a hit in the UK and in the United States where they love procedurals. And honestly, Murdoch Mysteries, FYI, I was on several episodes.
Oh, okay. So we all have to be big fans. Oh, that was you?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Right.
Holy shit.
Check me out. I actually got lucky, and I got cast in the episode that had another Canadian icon in it, William Shatner.
No way.
Yeah. So
that'd be it. That would be the peak.
It was a terrible day.
No.
No, actually the audition day was the terrible day. The actual day was very interesting. But the audition day was terrible because I had 2 auditions that day. And it was right when I got back from a tour of a play. And so I was like, I'm really ready for this one. The other one, not so much. So I went in and I killed the Murdoch Mysteries audition. And then I went and did the other audition and I was the worst ever. I excused myself and left and cried into my hands and stuff like that. But then I ended up getting the part. So then I get the script, and then on the front of the script it said, playing Mark Twain, I think it was Bill Shatner or something like that. And I was like, I called my agent immediately. And I was like, Rhonda, is this who I think it is? And she's like, yeah, are you okay with that? And I was like, I'm okay with that. No problem. Click. And then I just, again, cried. Different type of cry. But, yeah, I actually got a chance to, actually do a scene with William Shatner, kind of. I yelled at him.
Did he give you any of himself over the top? Just as a gift?
No, not... Well, no. He was very, very himself. He was cool. But I got to yell at him. I just essentially told him to get off the stage. Except more like, get off the stage, old man. Kind of like that. So that was a really fun day. I don't even know where that was from, but yeah, Murdoch Mysteries. That's a big deal. That's a big show. Very popular. But Schitt's Creek, I mean, geez, it's just like owning everything. And I'm very happy. One thing that's very interesting. So I'm going to clarify. Like, I work at the Second City, but I work at the box office. And previously, I was in the training center doing student services and stuff. And of course, I take lots of classes and do lots of sketch and improv and stuff. Yes, I am also an actor and comedian. But I really love hearing audiences these days who come through to see a show, and they look at the different pictures we have up on the walls,
Right.
and they spot out Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy, and they say, "Oh, that's the guy from Schitt's Creek." And I'm like, "Wow, that's so interesting." Because a year ago it would be, "That's the guy from SCTV,"
Right.
or "That's the guy from Christmas with the Cranks," or whatever show Eugene Levy was in, or whatever. And that's so cool. Like, they're coming back. People know who they are again.
Right.
Canadians actually like the show.
I haven't dug out or looked for old footage of SCTV. It's interesting. I rewatched Airplane, and I guess we're a little apart in age, but
No, I know Airplane. Airplane's great.
yeah.
I
but
force my boyfriend to watch it constantly.
it's weird that when it came out, it was crazy and hysterical, and then
Right.
about 5 years after that, all those jokes have been used by so many other people in so many other ways. It actually went through a period of time where it was actually garbage.
Right.
And then about 12 years later, something like that, you watched it
God
again.
damn,
and all
Leslie
that
Nielsen.
material- Yeah. Well, his brothers actually was a parliamentarian for the Conservative Party, and was
Yeah.
actually a vicious guy to watch in Parliament.
Right.
You wouldn't think.
Right.
And I don't just mean a vicious conservative. I mean a highly intelligent, really skilled adversary in Parliament. A serious guy. And then you've got his brother.
Who's a goofball.
Yeah.
And also a vicious parliamentarian, probably.
Probably, who knows?
I mean, you never know.
Who knows? But Airplane now has come back to being old enough that all the jokes are clean again.
That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm hoping, I don't know how SCTV has aged, and it was recorded in tape.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know if it's going to...
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when you watch SCTV clips. Not everything is current with the speed of today's comedy. Comedy today is faster. I think people demand get to the joke faster.
Interesting.
So, like, you can even watch old Second City sketches. So, like, I don't know, 20, even 10 years ago, let's say, and the sketches are slightly longer. So a sketch length might be 5-6 minutes. These days, no. Sketches are like 3 minutes. It's long to be 5. Like, sketches are much shorter.
Help me through my definitions. There's a Rodney Dangerfield kind of comedy where it's jokes per minute.
Yeah.
But to analyze it, they're not true self and in the moment.
No.
They are literally written on small pieces of paper and kept in a duffel bag. And he's a genius. But it's a different kind of comedy than something like maybe Mark Maron. And so is that what the alternative comedy movement is? Is it's true self and in the moment? Like, you only tell a story, and it's not a joke per minute. It's a story. And it might go on for a few minutes. It's not exactly a sketch, but...
Yeah.
Is that how to define, like, what do you call, is that...
I mean, it's funny to even call it, like, alternative comedy. It's just longer, It's, like, not going for the joke. And I think comedy just has so many different, more ways of expressing itself, or, like, definitions these days. You've got, like, just it's just faster, I don't know.
Is the art of comedy unlike a lot of other art forms in that it's the most specific and subjective? Like, if I recommend a comedian to somebody and they don't like it, it's a visceral reaction. Like, they're not buying the guy's presence.
Yeah.
Or there's something about him, his content, or his delivery that irks them. Whereas if it was a painting, even if it wasn't 100% in your choice, you might live with it. Or even music. But do you think comedy is the most subjective art form?
No. I think that all art is subjective. I think that there's paintings that you would not have on your wall. There's paintings that might depict, like, I don't know, serial murders, something crazy. Like, some people might love it, and then you'll just be like, no, not for me. That's not going on my wall. And I think like a lot of art, comedy definitely defines itself similarly, because comedy is all about an idea and relatability. And some people are just like, I don't want to know that. I don't want to see it. I don't want to feel it. I don't relate.
Has something changed with audiences? I know I hear this about American comedy, that there's a political correctness, but the audience seems to feel entitled. They feel like they have a role in the performance to comment on whether they agree with the content or not. Is this becoming more and more of a problem?
Like commenting on the performance?
Not heckling, the drunk lady who feels offended about what somebody said about her sister just had an accident or whatever. Do you find there's negative heckling from people who are claiming a sort of moral high ground? No?
I don't know if it's ever, because if you really look at the history of comedy, oh my God, like, that's happened for as long as I know of. If you look at some of those, what's his name? Some of the great guys, like the Andy Kaufmans and that kind of stuff. What's the guy's name? Before the pre-Andy Kaufman. Anyway,
Woody Allen did stand up.
Sure. Woody Allen. He'll get hecked
Lenny
off
Bruce.
Lenny Bruce.
In trouble.
See, Lenny Bruce.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, when you look at these guys, they were being heckled and pushed off stage for saying things. Still people will be heckled and pushed off stage for saying things. It's a comedian's job, and it's part of the profession to be sensitive of the line, to sense it. Not necessarily to be sensitive of it, but to know where it is and to know what buttons you want to push. And some comedians don't push buttons at all. They find things that are completely relatable. Look at the Don't Eat Eating guy. What's his name?
I just saw him. Brian Regan.
Yeah.
Now, here's a guy, and he's very animated, and yet when you look in the audience, which is packed full,
yeah,
it's a wide range of ages.
Uh-huh.
And everybody's into him.
Yeah.
And he works 100% clean. And he's pretty funny for a guy who doesn't tread on anyone's toes, really, or get into the...
it's considered a skill, really, to be able to work clean, because it's not that it's like easy to be a comedian at all. You're always poking fun at something, but to have enough content and to have enough relatability or intelligence or stupidity or whatever it is to make everybody in the room relate to you and laugh at something that you want them to laugh at, that's actually great.
Jim Gaffigan.
Gaffigan.
So Gaffigan's another guy who's pretty clean material, and yet he sells out stadiums.
Yeah, Gaffigan, he does all the food jokes and donut.
And talks about his family.
And his family.
Yeah.
And he's kind of like, Simpsons is still on the air, but he's kind of like a modern day Homer Simpson.
Okay.
I think, because he's kind of like a family man that's kind of dysfunctional in his own head. He's so relatable.
Well, Louis C.K. went through a phase where he was talking a lot about family.
Yeah.
And that was a dark time for me because it didn't jive with who I wanted Louis C.K. to be. What about that controversy? How do you think of the whole Louis C.K. thing?
The recent Louis C.K. controversy? It's totally...
And do we have to throw out all of our DVDs of him and cancel our Netflix? And
this is completely my opinion on the subject. I think you're not obligated to throw out any content of anything that you enjoy. There's a lot of really great material in all art that suffers from problems like racism and sexism and ism that still has merit. You know, like, it's still funny.
Louis C.K. is a tough one because the accusation is that the people he offended were two working female comedians who were adult women who giggled through the whole thing and could have left at any time. But of course, they had complaints, and the public wasn't, in this current culture, willing to be very forgiving. And they went and canceled all of his specials and productions and stuff.
I don't think that, I think it should affect the man. Like, I don't think what he was doing was appropriate. And I think that with regards to all of the movement of hashtag Me Too and I don't know, just women's empowerment that is good, you know, the man should definitely face consequences. That said, his work, if you enjoy it, why not enjoy it? There's some good content in there. You know, people, when you look at someone like, this is separate, but like when you look at like Dave Chappelle, he's very controversial these days. Some people don't like it, some people do.
Anyone who doesn't like it is a fucking idiot.
Well,
I'm sorry, but the Dave Chappelle's, he's got 3 or 4 specials just recently put on Netflix. Who, you know, I'm sure he's been working his stuff on the road. Yeah. But he's been out of it. And the one thing I do know about comedy is you have to do it several times a week to stay in it.
Yeah.
You don't just quit it for 15 years, come back and do 3 hours of Netflix specials. This guy's a special animal.
Oh my God, yeah. No, he's talented. I mean, I think there's a lot of great content in that. But that said, there's lots of people who don't agree with everything he says, and this is a very politicized
well, we've all got a soapbox now. We're all enabled to be commentators.
Everybody has a soapbox. Yeah. Everybody can constantly say anything and everything they want to say at all times. So, yeah, it's really easy to comment on this stuff. And some of it's valid, some of it's not valid. And like I say, like, not everything is for you. You know, you're not going to like everything.
Presumably, though, if you pay the money, you go into a comedy club.
Yeah.
And you sit down. You've waived your...
You've waived your right, I suppose.
Check the box at the door.
I mean, I hope so. But that, I don't know. I think it's the hard thing is that people have difficulty laughing at themselves. And I think it's kind of correlating with the whole Instagram soapbox phenomena of life. Because everybody has such soapbox power, everyone gets dished on. Like, when you say something on Facebook and your friends say, well, I don't know about that, or some guy that you just knew who's hardly your Facebook friend, or like someone else's Facebook friend says, well, I don't know about that, I disagree with this. Like, let's say you're talking about nuclear power, and like you'd say, oh, nuclear power sucks on Facebook, and then someone's like, well, no, nuclear power is great, and you're like, I hate, you know. I mean, it's really easy to get sensitive and like fight back because, I don't know, these people who haven't had a soapbox before suddenly have a soapbox, and guess what that means? People can say things at you. You can't keep your opinion to yourself anymore. People can just engage with you and tell you that you're an asshole, whether or not you think you are or not. And that's new for everybody.
Find us on Twitter at @thatarcher, our podcast page, tmi.twxnet.com. Rate the show on iTunes. It changes the way the show is listed.
What started you in comedy?
I don't know. I think it was always kind of leaned towards more of the making fun of things kind of angle.
Do you think it was a social currency for you when you were younger?
Like funniness?
Like that's what you used to impress other people when you were a kid?
No, I don't really know. I think I'm funny. I'm silly. I'm just driven to do it. I don't know if it's necessarily.
Did you hide behind it?
Currency.
Is it a way
no,
to?
because I was quiet.
Isn't that weird?
So, like, because I was quiet, I wasn't really saying things. I think I had other social currencies.
Do you think you were writing an inner monologue while you were observing?
Yeah. And probably just silently getting angry at things or, like, thinking something was dumb.
When did you know this was something you were gonna do?
I think I just kind of decided to pursue more comedy when I kind of got tired of just acting.
Okay,
and
this is interesting.
It wasn't bringing me what I wanted.
Isn't it true most people would start comedy first and then think about acting?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm weird. I just
So
kind of was like I wanted to perform.
So this is interesting because from a lot of people, the hardest part is building up to that first open mic. Mm-hmm. But by the time you did your first open mic, you already were in control of stage fright.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Jeepers Creepers. That sounds really weirdly rare to me.
Yeah, I think that's
almost
funny.
cheating.
Kind of, yeah. I think people definitely, when I do get up and do stand up or whatever.
Okay, maybe the question is better acting. Maybe was that because I want to find out about the time you were scared shitless.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so that must have been part of acting. Or have you always been fearless?
No, I think that I live with fear all the time.
Do you think every good comedian, even if he's been doing it for 50 years, still suffers crippling stage fright before he gets up?
Oh God, absolutely. Even if you don't feel it in the moment. I mean, when I like test out new material or whatever, I'll get off the stage and the show's over and then I get home or something and then I just suddenly feel like I have to throw up. Like it's sometimes it's not apparent in the moment.
That's fascinating. I'm not sure what comedian said it, but and he was describing a period in his early career where he was bombing and he was in a series of bombings. And I think he said one time he drove his car home and he sat in his car after the set at 2 a.m. for like 3 hours and just like stared at the windshield.
Yeah.
And just total self.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely had experiences like that.
So when I've confronted these fears of public speaking or just public appearances or whatever, I think that unless you've bombed, you've failed, because only when you bomb do you ever actually learn anything. The times you did well are a waste of time. Nothing was achieved there. No steel was layered on. No lessons were learned. Is that right or wrong for you?
Yes. I think you grow as a person experiencing the failures of that kind of stuff. Luckily, it's not like a big deal failure. At the end of the day, you can almost, if you can just remind yourself, like, it's just comedy. It's just acting. Like, you didn't die. You're not, in a war-torn country. You can get up and try again. Oh, yeah. Oh, great. I can do that. It's nice to know, but at the same time, it's emotionally draining to fail or to feel like you failed. And I think that's kind of what drove me back into shooting for more comedy. Like this is interesting, I think, is right at a theater school, I essentially went to Kingston, my hometown, and essentially became the de facto guy who was playing Sir Johnny McDonald.
You got typecast.
Yeah, I know.
As a former prime minister.
Oh yeah, isn't that so stupid? Yeah, typecast as a prime minister, and I think it's easy to let that sort of thing go to your head. It's like, I mean, like, I'm a prime minister, so maybe I should just make all the rules, okay? No, but I mean, I got to meet a lot of interesting people and politicians and this kind of stuff and that kind of stuff. Doing these plays in Kingston with the Sir Johnny McDonald Festival. It was because his 200th birthday was in 2015, and Kingston was trying to celebrate it and all this kind of stuff. and being part of that. And then there was a kind of show. It was in between like moving to Toronto and all this stuff. And then there was a show that was going to happen, and it was going to go across the country, and they cast me in that to celebrate the 200th birthday. And so I did that, and I had the most miserable time just acting and experiencing being around people. Some of them were great, some of them were awful to be around, and I just came home mentally exhausted from that time. Mentally exhausted, also feeling like I was trying to stick up for Sir John A. Macdonald or something like that. And I was like, I gotta switch gears. And that's when I decided to pursue comedy more. And I went and took a slew of classes at the Second City Training Center. And I mean, that kind of got me involved in the scene.
Is that expensive? What would happen if I walked down there and signed up for...
It's not that expensive. It's pretty reasonable. And now, paid advertisement for the Second City Training Center.
Knock yourself out.
Yeah, no. I do work for them, so I probably shouldn't say bad things.
Well, you should have a whole spiel all prepared.
No,
call 416-279.
Their classes are great. They do acting and improv and stand-up comedy, and I did improv, and then really quickly actually kind of got a job there, and that essentially helped pay for all the classes.
I gotta ask now, when you're a kid, there's always another kid you know who, when you're just playing, if you shoot them a line or they're in a setup, they can just keep going. Like if they're in space, like, and you read them a radio call, they can keep going and bouncing. I'm good for one or two bounce backs in an improv.
Oh yes.
Okay. But there's people who you set them up, wind them up, and hit that button.
Yeah.
And they can keep going.
Of course.
And they've got all the little sounds that they do. Like, Roger Houston, you know, that whistle noise, like they've got it all down. And it's as if it's just sitting there, prepared. But it isn't.
No.
They're making it in real time. It's a natural thing.
Yeah.
What is with that?
Improv? I mean, it's just this skill. Improv
is it a skill or is it a gift?
I'm hesitant to call anything a gift. I think you do have natural preclusions, delusions. I think though that you have to work at everything. Because some people are just naturally good at certain things, and one of them. But I came from training from the National Theater School, like 3 years of intense, like eight days a week kind of training.
That's reciting lines that have already been placed there. You've already got a whole construct.
No, it's a lot more than that. It's like movement classes, voice classes, which is kind of improv-y, clown, and of course theater-based lines and all that stuff. So lots of stuff, but no, improv is its own animal.
Did you say clown?
Clown.
Did you do it in a clown class?
Jeu is a form of clown. Jeu is play in French, as of course I'm sure we all know. Because
there's a whole religion
improv
behind this clown school.
Yeah,
and it's made fun of in that show Baskets, the Louis C.K.
I bet
production, and Zach Galifianakis just totally takes us there.
I mean, clown is its own thing, but clown is all about being delighted at the audiences.
But that's improv. There's no script for clowns.
No. Well, you can script a clown, of course, but I think the most delightful thing about clown is just remembering to be delighted at the audience.
Wow.
You just have to listen, and if you do something that's funny, you just sort of be like, oh, I'm really excited that you like that, and just do it again.
You laugh with the audience at yourself if you're a clown.
Yes, it is the skill of laughing at yourself based upon what other people think is funny.
It's crazy. Yeah. What about mime? Because I would think as an actor you would learn a lot if you studied mime.
Mime is like a French kind of school. It's based in
Isn't clown school French?
Yes. There's there's very famous clown schools in France, Lecoq and École Gaulier and all those people. They're lovely, and they have different philosophies and all that kind of stuff. But like mime, I think, is its own very specific thing that is based, I think, in the Lecoq school. Is very precise, and it's essentially trying to show the mirror to society, like show something real, except not real. It's a very weird thing. Yeah. But I mean, like, it also, in just general terms, miming something is a skill, pretending an object is there when it's actually not there.
So let's just say for you, let's say you're in an improv environment, and maybe this is giving away too much, but if it was me, if I had to respond to situations, I would have to meditate for weeks and store all kinds of reactions I could have to situations so that they were on hand if I was in that situation. Right. Now, the problem with me is that if the situation doesn't trigger any of those responses, then you're back to having nothing and working with nothing. Now, so what is the training for improv? Is it... Because you can't train for just creating something out of nothing.
No, I think it is essentially, though, training for creating something out of nothing.
Wow.
Improv is kind of, I don't know, I like to think of it as a couple of things. I like to think of it as kind of like grease for the wheels, in the way that it just kind of allows you to think a little bit better in the moment. And then the other way I like to think about it is like it's a kind of skill. Like acting is like one person described it to me, and I think it's very much this, like theater or film or whatever. It's kind of like setting up a railroad track for yourself, and then being a really good train, the best train that you can be, and then following that track precisely. And that's essentially what an actor does. And that's what you do. Improv is the opposite of that. It's laying down the track one piece by one piece as you go, and trying to remember all of that. And also trying to be a really great train at the same time. So it's kind of about controlling.
I never thought about that.
The chaos.
You have to actually remember what you've just done.
You have to try to.
Because it could be called back, or the premises feed off previously set down premises.
Yes. So, I mean, it's all about simplicity and opinions and saying things. And there's lots of different skills that you can work on to get better at that kind of stuff.
Comedians seem to be their funniest when they're taken off script. So if they're doing a stand-up and then the audience does something or the situation calls for something, in that moment, they would try to call on some kind of improvisational skill and think of something funny to say in real time. So this is writing in the moment.
Yep.
That's another thing that I don't think you could be trained for. It's got to be some kind of talent. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if you actually sat down and I think in some of these classes you can take, there are lessons that take you through the mechanisms of. And would they have a class and the instructor might say, okay, here's the situation, and then ask the class for a bunch of funny responses. And you can learn from, can you train that? I think of it as like a neural pathway. It's you got to install this new response mechanism to these situations. And I guess the more comfortable you are with spitting something out, the more free you are to spit out different things. Try things that may or may not work.
I think classes or just doing the act of improv itself, it just helps you just continue to associate and continue to tell the story.
Some of these skills sound like they could be useful in real life.
Improv schools love to tell businesses and stuff like that this very same thing, to make money in a corporate sense.
Okay, this is really weird. Probably I'll edit this out, but there's a thing, neuro-linguistic programming, which its early inventor relied a lot on these techniques of hypnotic induction. But it's not as simple as you might think, where they're hypnotizing somebody in the audience to do something silly. There's actually a really interesting science behind telling a story and taking the listener in a kind of circular, if you can imagine a circle in front of you, where the story has a bottom, and it comes around to the top, and which is where you might instill a certain idea, and then the story naturally takes another circle around the. And I was thinking, if you were an actor, you would want to study these techniques, because they get into the pacing, the rate of your breathing, your tonality, how you pace and structure your words, when you install ideas in the cycle of telling a story. All these things would be vital for news talking heads and radio announcers, because you control. I mean, they even talk about how if there's an announcer and he's in a certain tonality and cadence and he's got a certain rhythm, you as a listener almost are drawn into that pattern. And I think that in stand-up, even if you're not trying to do it on purpose, you are using a lot of these techniques.
Well, I think what you're talking about, and I think, it's approaching it from a scientific angle.
Well, that's now somebody who hasn't got any talent, right? That's what they're going to have to do. They're going to have to make a sexual fetish out of analyzing this down to the last little.
You know, I in theater school, this is a really wonderful, I think, thing that I keep reminding myself is there's kind of 1, 2, 3, 4. I think 4 different levels of competence. There's unconscious incompetence, and then there's conscious incompetence, and then there's conscious competence, and then there's unconscious competence. So it's just like you start out not knowing that you're not competent at something, then you are you notice that you're incompetent at something, and then you can consciously be competent at it, and then you're just competent at it without trying.
Wow.
So that's the thing. If you don't know how to do something, you don't know how to do it. But once you realize you can't do it, then you can work towards being competent at it, until eventually, and especially in acting, this is what you want to be, because you don't want to be thinking about all this scientific, vocalization and blah, 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 blah. Like, I have to remember to speak like this stuff. You want to be in the moment, with the person, with your audience in comedy. I
think you've just explained success and failure. And I can see how if you were bombing, you must have been in a place where you weren't aware of your level of competence. And the bombing actually brings you to this awareness of what you need to learn.
Bombing in comedy, I think, is really an opportunity to learn and listen. Because if you bomb a joke, you can get a laugh out of it if you just comment on the bombing. It's all about just saying it or doing the action and listening.
Okay, how do you deal with a heckler?
Oh, hecklers, you have to shut them down immediately. You have to be like, shut up and get out. And if they don't shut up, then you kick them out. Because if you are a stand-up comic, you cannot be the weak one in the room. Everyone is looking at you. You are the performance. So if someone doesn't want to look at you, please be quiet about it. You have to take it's not a democracy.
You need the people who work at the venue to be
support
there with you. Yeah.
Support you. Yes.
Else you're really.
Did you see that video online of this one guy jumping on stage and attacking a stand-up comedian? It took this security guards 5 minutes to get up on the stage and help this guy out. That is not a good situation. It's a tricky thing, but you have to be in control.
So this is this is giving away secrets. So back to what I was saying about improv, where I guess you wish that you would have a bunch of sort of saved responses for any situations that would come up.
Well, some people
how you
do.
Deal with a heckler? It's is that a moment of improv, or is that you having a pre?
It could be a moment of improv if you find something about the person that looks stupid. You're like, well, what's wrong with your hair? Your mom not teach you how to braid it properly? I mean, it's just finding something to read about them, just kind of read them like a book. And or I mean, you could have something in your back pocket that you've used before. So yeah, depends. You got to put them in their place because
because they say like you don't want to don't let them see you sweat, and I mean all these sort of one-liners.
100%. Oh my god! Like I mean, in any form of comedy, especially comedy. Actually, a comedian on stage of a show I did a couple of days ago, he said, "Hi, I'm not a comedian. I am a storyteller, because if I tell a bad joke, then it's just interesting." And I was like, that's so true. It's so accurate. Like people who are actors or dramaticians or whatever, you can get away with more stuff because, whatever. You don't have to make them laugh. It could just be interesting. But comedy, the audience is like sharks. Looking for blood in the water. As soon as they see you not be confident, they don't laugh at you. They're not looking for being your friend. It might not be a best analogy for me to call it blood in the water, because I don't know if they're like sharks who want to attack you. I think they're just sharks who are indifferent to you.
They speak up and they're trying to command the attention of the room.
Oh, but this is a heckler.
Okay.
Like, hecklers are totally different breed of animal.
I guess we're talking about two things: losing your audience, and triggering somebody to get up and give you a Yelp review during your performance.
A heckler is somebody who thinks that they can do it better than you.
Would you ever say, "Well, here's the mic, let's see what you got"?
100%.
And what happens?
They suck. They don't.
What if they came up and killed?
Great. I mean, like, I still got paid. Yeah, they didn't. I mean, like, they did my job for me. Congratulations. I mean,
it adds content to your show.
Sure does.
If you handle it right. Yeah.
I mean, like, if they think so, but most of the time, a heckler just thinks they know, or doesn't agree with something, or is drunk.
How do you write your material? Is it like notebooks or laptops?
Yeah.
Is it recording little audio notes to yourself?
I think you got it right on the nose. It's all of those things. It's notebooks, and it's my iPhone, and it's just talking things out, or it's something that I keep in my head for a while. And
do you find you victimize your friends by trying out your material on them?
Sometimes, but I'm not really. I prefer to put it in front of like an audience or something and just see if it flies.
Do you find, does that mean you can't trust your friends? Okay, so let me give you an example. So I have always been interested in comedy, and I have horrible delivery and all of that.
Probably. No.
Yeah, absolutely. It wouldn't matter, even if I stole a famous line, and even if I delivered it perfectly, they won't give it to me.
Okay.
They're not going to give me the laugh because of who I am the rest of the time. So maybe the people I know are the worst people to try anything on. And I know I've tried this. I've gotten a perfect, I know it's good material, I know it's delivered well, and they still won't give me the laugh.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just what people think is funny. Yeah. It is about testing.
But it's the person who's telling it.
Yeah.
And it's about their presence.
Yeah.
You have to, it's like money. You have to want to give that person money.
Right.
For that person to be a rich person.
Yeah.
Like it's part of the thing. So, so if you're an ass like me, and you tell the perfect joke delivered the perfect way and you don't get the laughs, it's because you don't deserve it.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's probably fair. I don't know. I don't know if I ever deserve a laugh. I just think, I don't know. If you just say things that you shouldn't say, sometimes you get a laugh. Or I certainly don't actively try and test material out with people because I know, like, I don't know. It depends upon the situation. Like, if you're in front of an audience, that's not like real life at all.
Right.
The audience is expecting something from you. It's more like just like hit the, make the funny. But in a conversation, you could like really just like jive off whatever people are saying. I don't know. It's all I like about listening more than like hitting a joke.
Okay, when you make notes,
And then also people, like, if you're like one-on-one, they feel pressure to laugh at you.
okay,
So I don't know if it's necessarily always authentic. Like, sometimes I'll test a joke on my boyfriend or whatever. I'll be like, so, okay, I wrote some new jokes. Da, 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 da. And he'll laugh at them, and I'll just be like, are you sure that was funny? Because I don't know if it's really authentic. But the thing is, I think if you do it that way, like if you try some material with some people, like, okay, if he laughs at some of that stuff, there's something there. But maybe not everyone will find it funny. And it might have been the fact that I said this joke and then this joke and then this joke, and that's why he laughed.
interesting.
It's not necessarily that any one of those things was funny at all. It was just the combination of it all together.
Without looking too closely here at you and stealing your technique. So let's say you're taking notes on a premise.
Yeah.
Is that what you're doing? You're writing down just a basic raw premise and you'll fatten it up later? Or
yeah.
like what level of the complete joke are you at when you're making these notes? Are you collecting premises, or are you actually writing down tags and then you set the premise up later? Is there any order or pattern to your process?
Like if I write down a joke, generally it's just something that I find. I guess it's like a comedy technique. I guess it's just like you just find something that you hate or makes you angry or that you're afraid of, something that you have that kind of like visceral reaction to, or say like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if, or versus isn't it funny that, kind of jokes. I don't just write it down. But then that's not funny in of itself because it's just a premise. So it's just like, then you have to like contextualize it and figure out, okay, well, what's an example of, I really hate it when like an old lady gets on the streetcar for the first time and holds up the whole streetcar because she's like, is this going to Eglinton? And you're like, no, this is a streetcar. No streetcars go to Eglinton. But she's like, well, this is my first time on a streetcar. Can you give me some credit? It's like, you really don't need to take a streetcar. You could probably drive. But I want to try the streetcar today. I want my freedom. Let me try this streetcar. And it's like, I really hate you. It's those frustrating moments. But like even when I was thinking of that, like I was thinking, okay, like there's the premise line where it's just like this old woman who goes onto the streetcar, and then she says something like, I'd like to try the streetcar today. And it's like, why do you have to try the streetcar today? You drive. That's the funny part or something. It's like fattening it up and then just like listing things.
There was a bunch of things there. So you gave her a voice.
Yeah.
You made her a little not quite tuned into the reality.
Yeah.
We're laughing at her flaws and vulnerability.
And also your own relatable frustration at something like this, or something, and I mean, like every line that I spat out just there isn't necessarily very funny. I don't know. Maybe someone would laugh at one of those things. Great. Then you just find which ones they do laugh at. So you just have to like come up with line after line after line after line and just test them out and say, okay, well, that one's not going to work. Maybe prehand. But maybe you might be surprised. The one that you crossed off, people are actually going to laugh at.
There's some simple rules like if you're telling an interesting or funny story, you want to save the funniest part till the end.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just simple mechanical things that are part of the design.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I mean, definitely like rules of three.
Rules of three.
Usually things usually come in threes.
And so this is a kind of a
Except
beat.
socks.
There's beats, and there's a timed sort of it's almost like a metronome. Am I wrong? In the threes.
Yeah,
but,
one person kind of described it like, instead of, there's a universal theme, universal tune that people talk about, like in acting. It's almost like you want to hear like da 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 da. In comedy, you want to hear da 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 da. There's the universal theme that you heard, and you have an expectation of the final note, but instead you get like a chicken, and that's the funny part.
Okay, so I call that a logical juxtaposition, where you set the person up to be on one track, and then you change you pull the carpet out from under them.
Funny devices.
What about victims? Does there always have to be a victim?
Like something that you are attacking or picking on?
It's either the stupidity of one of the people in the premise, or your own stupidity and maybe your false expectations of how it should go. But there's always somebody who's, in a sense, the victim. Yeah,
because you're making... Comedy is about making fun of something.
Okay.
It is. It is about making fun of something.
And that's kind of mean.
Yeah, it's mean. In drag, because I'm also a drag queen. I think this is funny because you call it being shady, which is a term. You just throw shade. So like a funny queen is actually very shady or like mean, because really you're just making fun of people.
And maybe you're somebody who would be made fun of.
Yes.
If you're the drag. So there's the irony of...
Exactly. Drag queen is defined as kind of being ostracized from society or not fitting in, or I don't know, laughing at the joke of clothing in society and makeup and everything in general. Really, gender is laughing at gender and becoming what you want to be. And comedy in that way speaks to me on that level. You define your own identity and make fun of things. And to properly make fun of things, I think the first thing you have to be able to not take seriously is yourself. Like, you cannot take yourself seriously if you're a comedian. If you're going to go around making fun of people, you have to not take yourself seriously.
Okay. Here's another thing I want to ask a comedian. So I could have sat down here when we started and said, Matt Donovan joins us today in the studio. It was a little bit awkward when I opened the door. I went to shake your hand and you grabbed my crotch. Now,
I totally didn't.
You could be...
I totally did not.
You could be offended by that, and you could, that's it, I'm leaving, or don't talk to me that way. Or I could say inappropriate things right now. As a comedian, can you really get ticked off? Don't talk to me like that. Like,
right.
Because this fits into what you're talking about. You have to be open as a comedian to laugh at yourself, to always appreciate the comedy of the moment. You can't be...
Like, I'm supposed to laugh at the fact that I was grabbing at your crotch? Like, that's a sexual offense. Like, why would I do that? That's so dumb. No, honestly, like, yeah, of course. I mean, who cares?
You can't have a thin skin. Sorry, you need to have a thick skin.
Yeah.
Does that change how you socialize with people? Because this thick skin that you have to have, it applies to your friendships and relationships. You're kind of polluted by that.
Kind of. I think it's really hard sometimes. My boyfriend will tell you this constantly, is that I'm just awful to be around. No, I'm wonderful to be around. I'm wonderful. No. But with his friends, sometimes I find it very hard to hang out with his friends, because I'm just not interested in what they're interested in. They're interested in going to work, building a 401k, buying a house in Mississauga. And I'm like, I have no interests in these things whatsoever. And it's one of my pet peeves, like going to a bar with people you work with and all you do is talk about work at the bar. Like, there's no need to talk about Linda from accounting while we're having a beer together. And yet people do. They can't stop talking about their lives, and they're not interested in each other at all.
Gotta ask you this. There's some comedians who hate civilians.
Yeah.
This is the same thing.
It's tough. It's tough to like people.
Yeah, but they're okay with other comedians.
Yeah, like I relate, and I can be around other comedians. I think a lot of comedians definitely, when they're at a party, they will gravitate towards whoever is funny immediately, because we just don't deal well with, I don't know, I hate
Small
but
talk.
regular people, I guess. It's tough. It's because we don't understand, and we are consciously don't get it, don't understand why people are like this, or making fun. We make fun of them constantly. We just don't. We're just like, why did you do that? Why are you standing in my way? Why are you waiting for an hour to get a bagel? I mean, like, just leave.
If you're a photographer, once you get heavily into it,
Sure,
you actually see every minute of every day as a photograph.
Yeah.
Is this the same for comedians?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I think that's definitely kind of a thing. You are always seeing the weird things in life, and
it's part of your process of how you mine material out of existence.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, like, you don't take yourself seriously. Yeah, you don't take yourself seriously. So when people take themselves seriously around you, you kind of are like, why? Why do you take yourself so seriously? Like, what you're doing is not ultimately very interesting or crazy or elaborate or crazy. It's like, what's the end to it? You're getting a house in Mississauga. Like, do you realize, like, you're going to live in Mississauga and then have to commute 2 hours a day? Oh, that sounds like a great time to me. It doesn't.
Okay.
I don't know.
So our existence in these concrete boxes in the concrete jungle.
Sure.
These people who talk about Kathy and accounting at every possible, they're actually trying to sort of, I don't know how to word it, but they're trying to add validation or validity to that path that they are on.
Yeah.
And
they take themselves seriously.
Yes. So, but a comedian, they're all about breaking that or giving light to it. And they, I don't want, but wouldn't they, they get up at 2:30 in the afternoon, they go watch a movie.
Yeah.
Whereas Joe and Jane, they're lucky if they can get some water out of the office water machine.
Mm-hmm.
So you're already at odds with the rest of sort of conventional society.
Yeah.
So these bubbles that we all live in, that's what you're exposing and trying to burst.
Yeah.
In a way, it gets a recipe for isolation. If you can never feel you're on that page with those people.
I think quite the contrary. In fact, it's more like finding your tribe, finding your people. I don't think you ever... you just figure out who you are. And then if you are of a proclivity to just look at things in a certain way, you have to be that way.
That's kind of a refusal to conform.
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess. But I mean, like, it is conforming in one way because you're just realizing who you are. I mean, I think there's a lot of very radical mindsets in the world. Like when I think of, the quote-unquote homeless person, there's very many different types of homeless people. And one of the interesting types of homeless people is what I like to consider the vagabond, who are not homeless for any particular reason except the desire to be homeless. They just reject all of society, and they love it. and that's their existence, and they've found themselves that way. And I find that very interesting.
Are all comedians crazy?
No,
Or from a bad background, they have wounds. There's something always screwed up about successful comedians. Is that too simplistic? Can you have an actual happy-go-lucky, well-adjusted comedian? I argue not a chance. What do you think?
I'm gonna say, unfortunately, no. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah,
comedians aren't happy, well-adjusted.
yeah.
Because
how else would you notice all these weird little things to pick on unless you were tuned right into a kind of negative worldview in a way?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually rather optimistic for my pessimism. I mean, I keep a stiff upper lip. I've learned like it's important to get up after you fall down, like the tub thumping song. It's just like, you got to get up and do it again and again and again, no matter how many failures or successes you have or whatever. I don't know. There's everybody's got a little bit of hurt, and some people just choose to find a way to laugh at it. And then they see things in the world in a totally different way.
What kind of shows are people going to see if they go down to Second City?
Oh, they see sketch comedy. And Second City is a great little idea of that, because it is. It's talking about the world in an amazing socially progressive way, but with a funny outlook, and most importantly, in a way that is relatable to as many people as possible. It's interesting to note that I think a lot of comedians in the comedy community think about Second City as kind of halving itself. Like, sometimes it's just like they don't get a lot of traction. People don't respect Second City in the comedy community sometimes because Second City really desperately tries to be relatable and not too far, so that they can be socially progressive and talk about interesting things, but like still be able to.
Is that a mistake, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's an amazing company that has been able to survive. With it doesn't have government grants. Let's say, it survives all by itself.
I assume it has a website that people can get an idea of the shows.
Oh, geez. Yeah, Second City, secondcity.com. I mean, it's in Toronto, it's in Chicago, it's in Hollywood. It's a great place.
Okay.
Yeah, come and see some sketch comedy.
And support a Canadian art. Do you know anything about the East Coast?
I know it's on the east side of Canada, and I've been there a couple times.
Okay.
It's a friendly and happy place.
You might say that you had family there, or
I have
something.
no family in the East Coast whatsoever. No.
A lot of Canadian comedy has just come from the East Coast.
Oh, sure. I mean, they're talkative out there.
They're storytellers.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
is. It's part of their social currency.
No, I'm an Ontario boy where we don't talk to people.
Right.
It's like if you see your neighbor, you run.
Is that just a Toronto thing, or is that an Ontario thing?
That's an Ontario thing.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
I spent most of my childhood summers in PEI because that's half of my family with the PEI thing.
Yeah.
And then I like potato farmers or lobster hunters. They're actually city dwellers in PEI.
When I see my neighbors, I do not say hi. I cross my arms.
You could live for 20 years.
I cross the street
and not know your neighbors.
And I call my therapist because I can't handle it.
Do all comedians have therapists?
No, but they should. Yeah. No. I think it's hilarious, and I think that's at the core of my being too. Just realizing that I don't know.
You should do some bits about Torontonian hostility.
Ontarians.
There's a thing here.
Well, no, we're passive aggressive. We're not hostile. In Toronto, we're more aggressive. We're probably the most aggressive of all Canadians. But I don't know. Yeah, no, I could actually say that I've been across the country. Yeah, we are pretty aggressive. Except Edmonton.
Is comedy alive and well on the West Coast? You know, when you get closer to Vancouver, has that got a good comedy scene?
Oh, in Vancouver? I mean, Vancouver, no. Vancouver's so boring.
So Toronto...
Everyone's so high.
Is Toronto the capital of Canadian comedy? There's the Montreal Comedy Festival. Is that just big for the festivals, or is there a vibrant...
I think that, yeah, Toronto definitely has the biggest population and biggest playground for improv and comp stand-up and all that stuff. But like you said, the East Coast has a big storytelling background. And I know a lot of East Coasters come to Toronto. So I know a lot of people from the East Coast that come to Toronto to do comedy, pursue comedy. Because the problem is that, I mean, really... there's nowhere to really go on the East Coast. There's like Halifax and St. John's. I mean, Newfoundland is its own little prison of an island out there. So, I mean, they don't feel like they can get their message out there and people even care. I mean, they might be great storytellers, but no one cares.
If they're all good storytellers.
Because they're all good storytellers.
Exactly.
So,
it's interesting about the Trailer Park Boys. If you research each of the people involved, they're all accomplished Canadians. Like it all looks like a train wreck, but every single one of those characters, like even Ricky's dad, what the hell is his name? Ricky's dad. Sure. He's the lawyer that pitched the show.
Right.
He's a lawyer.
Right.
Ricky's wife, you know, she's an Air Force captain. I mean, even Corey teaches acting. Mr. Leahy has run a theater for like 37 years. I mean, these are great Canadians. Randy, Ricky, and Julian, they have degrees in business and run successful businesses on the East Coast. I mean, these are special people.
Well, I think that's the weird thing about the entertainment industry in general, is that people are very talented. People are really smart, so good at what they do, incredible, the most amazing we've ever seen, and then we cast you in this thing and you're going to do an amazing impresario level job, virtuoso skill, and no one will see it. But then you dumb them down and put them into a superhero movie and everyone sees it. So it's not being incredible and unrelatable. It's about taking that talent and like bringing it down to a relatable level that people understand. You know, just because you're smart doesn't mean everyone's going to get your jokes. They're going to fly right over people's heads. You know, they're going to be like, I don't know the definition of pizza.
You couldn't think of a word.
Yeah, my brain's like dead, so I'm like, oh, pizza. No one knows what pizza actually means. Why is it even called pizza? It's dumb. Anyway.
Thanks for talking to us, Matt.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to plug?
Yeah. Come out and see my show. It's the first Saturday of the month at Bad Dog Theater. It's called Heckler Uses Somewhat Improvised Murder Mystery. It's a new murder mystery every month where the audience gets to solve who done it. Some of the funniest improvisers you'll ever see. And then you might even be the victim. It's a pretty fun show.
Where's the theater located?
It's 875 Bloor Street, right around Ossington Station. It's in Toronto.
If we were going to pre-Google that.
Oh, yeah. Just search baddog.com.
Okay.
And you'll find my show there, or call our box office or something like that.
And where do you do stand-up sets every now and then?
I do it so periodically because I do different things. I do drag, I do stand-up, I do this, I do that. Sometimes it's booked, sometimes it's not.
And you have an acting gig coming up?
Sure. I'm shooting a commercial next week. So look for me on your internet.
I'm
sure I'll pop up.
TV or is it internet?
I think this one's on the internet, so I'll probably pop up in your internet browser, and you'll be like, "Oh, okay."
Can you say the product, or is that?
I think I can. It's for like OLG. Oh. That's all I'm gonna say. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You can't win if you don't buy a ticket.
Yeah, I have no control over that kind of stuff.
That's one of their slogans. Thanks again, Matt.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me. I hope that I have said something intelligent. I have enjoyed 2 beers, and that was great.
But if you did say anything intelligent, it would go right over people's heads anyway, so...
Well, I assume it would go over your head because I didn't count very many digits on your IQ test there, but that's
great.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Mm-hmm.
Find us on Twitter, @thatarcher. Our podcast page, tmi.twxnet.com. Rate the show on iTunes. It changes the way the show is listed.
And for your information, you know, the interesting thing is in 25 years and 50 years and 100 years from now, when the government is, you know, when they talk about the government shutdown, they're going to be talking about the President of the United States. Who was the president at that time? Mm-hmm. They're not going to be talking who the head of the House was, the head of the Senate, who's running things in Washington. So I really think the pressure is on the president.
I'm Dave Archer.
And I'm Matt Donovan in Toronto.